Hi everyone, and welcome to the class. Thank you very much for joining us. First off, I'd just like to tell you that now you've pressed play, you shouldn't have to rewind the class or fast forward. All the breaks and the bits for you to try stuff are built into the class. So it may be that you're kind of quite fast at doing things. So if you are, feel free to have a little chat. So there is a comments box just underneath here. That's not always the easiest way to comment, and people are finding that actually the messenger box that we set up before the class is a bit easier. The other good thing about the messenger box is that you can also share your photos of what you're up to. So that's nice because it gives people a sense of, again, being together, and people can see what their classmates are doing and how they're getting on. And also the tutor can have a look as well. So the tutor is here, so do use them and ask them sort of any questions that you might have. So there's a bit in the film that you're not clear of or you're struggling with, do sort of put those questions to them, and they're there to do that. So it's an added bonus on, just an online tutorial. If you're a little bit slower and you like to take your time over things, then at the end of each doing session, which is marked by a clock, you will find that there's a buzzer that goes off. So please do come back and join us, because again, it's kind of trying to keep everyone together in the same class doing the same thing at the same time, roughly. Yeah, and if you then want to recap, or there's a bit that you've missed, the videos are going to stay online for the near to foreseeable future, so you can always go back and have a little look at those again, and also share them on with anyone that you think might enjoy it too. I think that's probably about it from me. Welcome back. Hopefully in the time since we've been away, you've had a little bit of time to practice, but I'm just going to recap over the things that we did last time to get us up to where we need to be today. So you need to do your slip knot. So remember, we put that over there. We take the strand, we put it through, we grab it, and we get both those bits there, and we've got a slippery knot which we put onto our needles. Okay, so needles, let's get the other one. We're going to cast on, for today, we're going to cast on 10 stitches as we did last time. So remember, we do it like this. So we put the needle through, we go round, we pull out like we would for a knit stitch, and then we take that stitch and we put it onto there. So we're going to do 10 of those. I don't want to spend too long on this because obviously most of you have either watched the video in your own time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or you've done the live class and had a bit of a practice in between, hopefully. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So we've got 10 stitches cast on. And we're going to do one knit row, exactly the same as you did before. So we put the needle in, we go round the back and through the middle, down, catch that stitch, and then off. So remember, we're transferring it from one needle to the next. So I'll do that fairly quickly. So hopefully if you have had a practice, you might have found that your speed has increased as you've gone along, and knitting something of a relative size doesn't seem too daunting. So what we're doing today is we're just going to knit another little square sample, but you'll learn all the skills that you need to then start putting that into making the little hearts. That's going to be our ultimate aim through all these 3 classes. So today I'm going to show you how to purl. So once you've done your knit row, I'll stop there for now, give you a little break. So you need to put your slip knot on, cast on 10 stitches, do 1 knit row, and we'll probably have about 5 minutes to do that. No, 10, I'll be generous, we'll have 10 minutes to do that. All right, off you go.
clouds hide the night, starlight fills this room. These days are hard in times of trouble. The morning sun breaks to the dawn of a new day. Can I take another hard week? Could I run a little faster? These days are hard in times of trouble. Sat watching satellites fall at your feet, and I am so tired that I cannot sleep. Would you stay with me? Will you be my star across the river? Cold wind sunset at the end of a long day. Could I push a little harder? Regrets won't last forever. These days are hard in times of trouble. Sat watching satellites fall at your feet, and I am so tired that I cannot sleep. Would you stay with me? Will you be my star-crossed lover? I miss you. Do you miss me too? Sat watching satellites fall at your feet, and I am so tired that I cannot sleep. Would you stay with me? Will you be my star-crossed lover?
Once we get to walk upon this earth, twice we get to make a mistake and learn. 3 times is enough to realize you're stronger than all of your doubts. And for me, live your days like every second counts. live happy here on. 'Cause when I'm 99 and I'm looking back on my life, I wanna know I made it all that I could have. No, I made some bad decisions, but they made me wiser. And I smile and roll my eyes, think back to all the beautiful times I had, and know I made every second count. 'Cause we're all faced with choices, and we might choose wrong. It's a warpath of consequences and lessons learned. But if you hide away at risk of failing, then there'll be no sunshine to light the road. 'Cause when you're 99 and you're looking back on your life, you wanna know you made it all that you could have. Know you made some bad decisions, but they made you wiser. And you smile and roll your eyes, think back to all the beautiful times you've had, and know you made every second count. Cause when we're 99 and we're looking back on our lives, I wanna know we made it all that we could have. No, we made some bad decisions, but they made us wiser. And we'll smile and roll our eyes and think back to all the beautiful times we've had, and know we made every second count.
Okay, so you should have your 10 stitches cast on and knit. What I'm going to show you today, so if you carried on knitting completely like that, you'd end up with garter stitch, which is that sort of bumpy stitch. It's kind of what people start with, and it's what you did last week. So you end up with a kind of ridgy, kind of bumpy piece of knitting. If you stitch with purl, so a row of knit and a row of what I'm going to show you now, you will end up with a flat piece of knitting, more like kind of machine knitting, I suppose, that you might buy at the shop. So garter tends to look a bit more home knit, and stocking stitch tends to look a little bit more like something from a shop. So it's kind of more or less the same, but you see we've got the back of the stitch in here, and what we're going to do is we're going to take our needle, and instead of going up into the stitch like that and to the back, we're going to go down in the stitch like that, and we're going to put the needles to the front. So I'll show you again. So it's basically just the same, only down like that. And the other important thing is, whereas before you'd have your yarn at the back, for this stitch we're going to have the yarn at the front of the knitting. So we're going to go round and through the middle, the same as we did before, and we're going to pull out, and just as we're about to pull out, we're going to go up like that, and then we're going to take that stitch off. So I'll show you again. So we go in through the knitting. Remember your yarn at the front, not at the back. We're going to pull it round like that, and then we're going to pull out and off like that. So we're going to go round. Let me move my thumb out of the way. We're going to go round the knitting. So let me show you that again. You're going to go round the front, through the middle. Oh, no, you're not. Through the middle, and then you're going to pull out as if you're going to pull out again, and then you're going to pull the needle up. So in the same way as you pulled nearly out with the knitting, you're going to do the same. So once again, round, and then pull as if you're going to pull completely out the knitting, but then just at the last minute you catch that stitch and you go upwards and you pull that stitch off. So one more time. So you go round, pull as if you're going to pull out. At the last minute you go up and into the stitch and up like that, and then this stitch, which is on this needle, pulls out. So I'll do to the end of the row, and then you can see, ooh, fingers and thumbs today. I suppose you kind of need to be fingers and thumbs when you're knitting, to be honest. So, and what you will get starting to grow is, you see your knitting before was kind of sort of wavy, but this is kind of like a flat surface. So what you'd do if you were going to continue is you'd do one row in knit, one row in purl. So that means, that's when people say knit one row, purl one row, that's what they mean, and you'd end up with a flat piece of knitting. So I'll give you some time to just do one row in purl. So yeah, don't go any further than just the one row, and then we'll kind of come back and I'll show you another knit row, but also some of the mistakes that you might make along the way and how to rectify those.
Of all the boys I've known, and I've known some, before I first met you I was lonesome. But then you came inside, dear, my heart grew light, and this old world seemed new to me. You're really swell, I have to admit. You deserve expressions that really fit you. And so I've racked my brain hoping to explain all the things that you do to me. Bij mir bist du schön, Let me explain. Thy mere bis de shame means that you're grand. Thy mere bis de shame, again I'll explain. It means you're the fairest in the land. I could say Bella, Bella, even sehr wunderbar. Each language only helps me tell you how grand you are. And I've tried to explain by mere bis de shame. So kiss me and say you'll understand. By mere bis de shame. You've heard it all before, but let me try to explain. By mere bis de shame means that you're grand. By mere bis de shame. Such an old refrain, and yet I should explain. It means I am begging for your hand. I could say Bella, Bella, even sehr wunderbar. Each language only helps me tell you how grand you are. And I've tried to explain by mere bis de shame. So kiss me and say you'll understand. I could say Bella, Bella, even sehr wunderbar. Each language only helps me tell you how grand you are. And I've tried to explain by mere bis de shame. So kiss me and say you'll understand. Just kiss me and say you'll understand. La gusta, la gusta, la gusta, la gusta, la gusta, quanta la gusta, la gusta, la gusta, la gusta, la gusta, la gusta. We gotta get going, where are we going, what are we gonna do? We're on our way to somewhere, the three of us and you. What'll we see there, who will be there, what'll be the big surprise? There may be caballeros with dark and flashing eyes. We're on our way, pack up your pack, and if we stay, we won't come back. How can we go? We don't have a dime, but we're going and we're gonna have a happy time. Quanta la gusta, 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 quanta la gusta, la gusta, la gusta, la gusta, la gusta, la gusta. Now someone said he'd just come back from somewhere, a friend of mine that I don't even know. He told me that it's very close to nowhere. If that's the case, that's the place we all should go. We gotta get going, where are we going, what are we gonna do? We're on our way to somewhere, the three of us and you. What'll we see there, who will be there, what'll be the big surprise? There may be caballeros with dark and flashing eyes. I'll take a train.
You take a train.
You take a boat.
I'll take a boat.
You take a plane.
I'll take a plane.
You ride a goat.
You ride the goat.
Oh, we don't care. We'll either walk or climb, but we'll get there and we're gonna have a happy time. Quanta la gusta, 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 quanta la gusta, la gusta, la gusta, la gusta, la gusta, la gusta. Now someone said he'd just come back from somewhere and picked a few petunias in the snow. He told me that it's very close to nowhere. If that's the case, that's the place we all should go. We gotta get going, where are we going, what are we gonna see? We're off to to see somebody who's on his way to me. Gonna go your way, I'll go my way. Wanna make a little bet? We'll all meet in the country. They haven't found us yet. We're on our way.
We're on our way.
Pack up your pack.
Pack up your pack.
And if we stay, we won't come back.
We won't come back.
How can we go? We don't have a dime, but we're going and we're gonna have a happy, 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 happy. Come on, Stella, 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 we're gonna have a happy time.
Okay, welcome back. We would be on a knit row, so we've done a knit row, we've done a purl row, and I'm just going to show you some mistakes. These might be things that you're sort of encountering. There is a really good link which I will share with everyone, which just sort of says the 10 most common mistakes and how to solve those. So the first mistake you might do, it's kind of hard with this wool because it's not really you get wool that's very easy to split. So it doesn't sort of stick together, and what you might do in that case is you might, instead of going into the stitch there, you might go into, as I say, it's quite hard with these big needles, you might go into the actual, we'll get in there, see, it's harder to make mistakes sometimes than you think. So you might go into the yarn like that, so you can see there the yarn has split, so there's a bit of yarn on that side of the needle in there, and we should be in there. Oh, my phone is descending, so let it settle. So what you need to do then is quite simple. If you notice it, just come out of the stitch and back into the right place that you need to be. So you might carry on and knit that like that, and then you'd sort of end up with a sort of bit of a scratty bit, but you still ended up with just one bit on there, but your yarn, that stitch would be a lot thinner and kind of might be sort of noticeable. So the other thing you might do is you might not go into the right place in the stitch again, so you might go into the knitting, so you want to be in that stitch nearest to the actual needle, but you might go into there, and the result of that would be, if you knitted that, that you can end up with 2 stitches on your needle, so I haven't, and a bit of a kind of knobbly bit as well. You may sort of just do that and transfer it over. That would be called a slip stitch, and you haven't knitted that, and you're probably likely to end up with a little hole in that. You'd still have the same number of stitches, but you'd end up with a little bit of a hole. You can see a hole has appeared there. So just important that you go through all the stages of the knitting each time to get your stitch onto there. You may only do part of the stitch, so you might do that bit and yarn over like that, and then you might just take it off your needle like that, and then you'll end up with, you see we've got, if we do the next stitch, you see we've got it twisted, so we've got this stitch is twisted, and if we do the next one, will be twisted, and we've also increased a stitch, so when we get to the other end we'd have 11 stitches instead of the 10 that we need, and that would make have the effect that our knitting would start to get wider, and if we did that a few times we'd end up with lots more stitches. Sometimes people find that they've increased stitches as they've gone along. Let me think what else you might do that's wrong. You might put your thing in, and you might go round, and then you might forget and go round again. That's called a yarn over. It's important and useful sometimes, but again you end up with 2 crossed over stitches, so we've got 12 stitches all of a sudden, so you find that you're getting more and more stitches as you go along. You could put your knitting down and you could drop a stitch, which is probably the most drastic one to sort out, so you could just, that could just fall completely off the end, and you see there we've got a little loop, which if left with nothing done with it, would just run right the way down your knitting, and you'd end up with a line of holes. So if it falls off, not a biggie. If you can grab it with your fingers and put it back on, that is brilliant. If you have dropped it off and you've not noticed, and you've gone along and you've knitted to the end, and you've realised, oh, I've got a massive hole there, and this bit that shouldn't be there. So what you can do is just pull it to make sure that it's not going to go any further, and then I'm going to knit this row. It should be a purl row, but I'll knit it just for the sake of showing you these mistakes. So knit 2 where the stitch should be, so it's 3 from the end, and then with a crochet hook, or if you've got dexterous fingers, pull that loop, and what you want, I'm going to have to come close up and hope, is that bit there, that strand, to go through the loop. So that's where the crochet hook comes in handy, but I'm just going to poke it through. So the tricky bit, let me put this down for a minute. Or if you don't fancy doing this tricky scenario, which I'm making look incredibly hard, so pull that through, and then that stitch that we've just pulled through is what we need to put on to that needle to be knitted. So if you don't fancy all that kind of really complicated pulling it through, again it's easier with a crochet hook. If you don't fancy that, you can just unravel it back to where you started from, or where the stitch has been dropped. So as you can see, we've got to this kind of, you know, curious stitch, which is one of our ones that we crossed over by mistake, by yarning over, and so putting the yarn over too many times. So what we could do to rectify that, it's not going to be the kind of the less messy side of things, but you could just knit 2 together. So get the one that is the real stitch and that one, and put them both on the needle. So, and then we've got to another one here, which is a dodgy one that we don't want. So we could try taking it off. It probably depends how it's created. No, it's not going to work, so I think we're best knitting those 2 together. But like I say, if you're finding, if you really can't cope with the fact that it's going to look a bit different, then probably sort of unravel it and start again. So we need to get back to basically having 10 stitches again. Probably won't, you know, if you notice it on the next row, it's probably not going to make a massive difference to your knitting, to be honest, unless you're a complete perfectionist. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And again, I don't want to go on about mistakes too long, because the mistakes you can make are many and varied. So I'll send everyone the link, and you can have a look and see if any other things that you're encountering might be what's happening to you. I think the other thing that people were talking about was the when they feel this stitch at the front is always looser. You can see on mine it is looser, so it's sometimes a bit tricky to know where you're going into on that first stitch. But don't worry about that stitch being loose, because obviously once you knit it, it will be all remedied. So I can't really give you anything to do now, because I don't really want to send you off to do loads of mistakes. So let us continue as we were kind of going on. So for with my kind of really scratchy little bit of knitting with all its mistakes in now, I shall continue and do. So you've done a knit row and a purl row. Mine's kind of, as you can see, it's all gone a bit pear-shaped. But so what you're going to do is you're going to do a knit row again. So you've done the knit row, the purl row. Now you do a knit row, and you do a purl row, and a knit row, and a purl row. And if you can do sort of 10 rows like that, so alternating. So just to remind you of the purl row, so is you go in the front. Remember that your yarn is at the front, round there, pull as if you're going to go out, and then up, and then pull that stitch off. So that's your purl row. Your knit row, your yarn is at the back, and you go up into the knitting, round, and then through like that. So if you can have a little go at doing a purl row and a knit row, and a purl row and a knit row, and see how you get on. I'm still here, so give us a shout if you're struggling or anything's going awry. All right, cheerio. break I've undone my kind of scruffy bit with all the mistakes in, and just done another little bit. So I realised that actually to set your 10 rows was quite difficult. So if you haven't done the whole 10 rows, then don't worry. So hopefully you should be getting something that sort of looks a little bit flat like this. So if you compare it to your piece from last class, that was all bumpy. So a couple of things that you may encounter. So first off, if you're anything like me, you forget to write down how many rows you've done. So if you are counting rows or you've miscounted your rows or lost count, so a good way to count rows is you see each one of these V's is a little row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we've got 10 rows. The other thing to note is that your yarn, your wool, your piece of knitting will now start to have two different sides. So it's got a smooth side like this, which would normally be at the outside of your garment, although you might want it the other way around if you were trying to be some kind of wacky knitter. But this would normally be the outside of your garment, and then the other side would normally be, which is a bit more of a kind of baskety kind of weave, would be the back of your, or the wrong side of your knitting. So this is known as the right side and this is known as the wrong side. So if you put down your knitting and you forget, am I on a purl row or am I on a knit row? This used to, has been the bane of my life for many years until I realised this. So you can look at your knitting, pick it up, and if you've got this in your left hand or your right hand, whichever way round you knit, and the smooth side is facing you, then you know, and it's over this side, you know that is a knit row. So you're going to knit that row. If you find the other way round and you've got the wobbly side facing you, you know that you're on a purl row. The other thing that I sometimes note as well is where the tail's coming from. So if the tail is on one side, I know it's a purl row. If it's on the other side, I know it's a knit row. So I know I kind of get in my head as well. No tail is knit row. Tail is purl row, just as an extra little reminder. The other thing that maybe you might do when you start knitting, and I remember being at a knitting sort of group one time, and a lady who had just started knitting sort of said, all right, I'm off home now, and she was midway through a row and there was just screeches of horror that you should end your row midway. So it does create problems because you might be knitting a row and then you get to here and you decide, oh, I've had enough now, I'm going to stop. And then when you pick it back up, you're not sure whether you're on a knit row or a purl row. It's all a bit confusing. So we'll do a few stitches. So maybe you stop there and you go, oh, I've had enough now, I'm going to put that to one side. And then you pick it up and you're like, I don't really know. So the best thing to do is the best thing to do is not to stop mid-row, but some crisis occurs and you have to run off and go and work for the UN or something. That should really probably be the only reason why you'd stop knitting halfway through a row, to be honest. But if you do, sort of put it in your hands and make sure that your tail of your wool is in the right hand. So you could start off, you could go, oh right, I think I'm on a purl row, but you can see that that's in the wrong hands. That's not in the hand you'd normally use. So get it into the right hand. Apologies for all the kind of exterior noise at the moment. I'm not sure whether you're getting that, but so yeah, set off again. Ooh. So you will make mistakes, of course you will, but as long as you can work out kind of roughly why you've made them. So hopefully as you're going along your tension is getting a little bit better as well. So you normally cast off on a knit row. I'm not quite sure why, but you do. So so we'll do another purl row. So I'll just do casting off again. And while I'm doing it, you may have encountered people saying things like knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. that's kind of beyond what we need to make the love hearts that we're going to make at the end of these 3 classes. And I might do another little class on different stitches, but you've basically learned 2 different kinds of knitting, garter stitch and stocking stitch. This is stocking stitch. You'll notice that with stocking stitch it curls, curls, but if you were doing it into a garment, that would be all right, because you'd be sewing that to something else and that would flatten it out a little bit. You can also, if you like ironing, you can get an iron and just iron it a bit flatter as well, stop it curling so much. So just remembering casting off if that's what we want to do. So you put the needle in, put the wool round, do a stitch, you do another stitch. So you've got 2 stitches on there, you take that one and you pull it over the top of there. So 2 stitches, take the first stitch and pull it over, 2 stitches, take the first stitch and pull it over, 2 stitches, take the first stitch, pull it over. Keep doing that, if you remember, to the end of your row. So you've now made 2 little samples, so feel free to practice and carry on making some bigger things in the meantime until the next class. The next class I'll be teaching all the skills. Oh, that's noisy, can you still hear me? All the skills you need to decrease and increase. And then you get to the end of your yarn, a pair of scissors, or in my case, if you've got quite a kind of easy to tear yarn, you can tear it off, and that bit of yarn goes through there, and you've got your little bit of stocking stitch. So one of the perils of recording using a chair balanced on a bed in a bedroom is obviously I'm not soundproof, so apologies if you've lost a little bit of sound today. Hopefully you can still hear me. So yeah, have a little practice of that. That is the stitch that we're going to be using to carry on with and make our hearts. So you need to know how to do a knit row and a purl row, and how to cast off. And next time I'll show you how to decrease and increase, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about some of the mistakes that maybe you've made along the way and try and work out why they're occurring. Alright, cheerio. I hope you enjoyed the class. Just a quick summing up from me. So thank you very much to our tutor today. Also thank you to all the musicians who inputted music. We are passionate about making sure that we pay musicians for the music that they provide, and also artists for the massive amount of time that they provide in producing the film and being here today. So if you do find that you've got a bit of spare change in your pocket, please do feel free to support us on patreon.com. So on this site you'll find different tiers that you can use to support the project. So the first one is just $3 a month, and that will with lots of people joining in, allow us to start paying some artists and get some new music on the films as well. And then if you find yourself in a wonderful position of having a little bit more and also want to start collecting some artwork, you can try the £50 tier, and that you'll get a piece of artwork from myself every month. So yeah, thank you very much for coming along. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please do share, and that's it from me. Cheerio.
Once we get to walk upon this earth, twice we get to make a mistake and learn. 3 times is enough to realize you're stronger than all of your doubts. And for me, live your days like every second